Hello, my name is Eric Harper. I'm with the ABB Corporate Research, and I'm privileged to introduce you to the next speaker who will share his ideas and recommendations for successful digital transformation. So Alon Segal is Senior Vice President of Software and Services at Telit Wireless Solutions. He's responsible for the technology roadmap and product strategy for software and services. He is a visionary technologist and entrepreneur with global work experience. Throughout his career, he has held senior technical roles that contributed to business growth and leading-edge innovation. Prior to joining Telit, Alon was Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Zoadix, a groundbreaking software-as-a-service middleware solution that turns healthcare IT into an active environment where patient medical information reaches out for providers' attention. Alon served as Vice President of Portfolio Product Management at Amdocs, a $3 billion telecom billing giant, where he was responsible for the overall product portfolio, roadmap, and alignment. He was founder and CEO of Telesprit Communications, a leading enabler of cloud-based wireless data services acquired by Evolving Systems. Prior to Telesprit, Alon worked at Electronics for Imaging as General Manager for Production Printing Systems, and that was EFI's most profitable business unit. Alon has authored and been granted multiple patents, and his industry efforts have been recognized throughout his career as a recipient of numerous awards. Alon received an MBA in Finance and Operations Research from Tel Aviv University and a Bachelor of Computer Science cum laude from Technion, the Israeli Institute of Technology. Please join me in welcoming Alon to the stage.
Good evening, Barcelona. So thank you for those kind words of introduction. But a few words about what I'm here to talk about and why I feel qualified to talk to you all about IoT. So I work for Telit, and Telit is a pure-play IoT solutions company. We provide hardware and technology and services that allow you to connect your things to your applications, to your enterprise. Basically, the engine of IoT. We've been doing IoT now for over 18 years, successfully, and this is really our primary reason for existence. So we've felt the pain, and we've seen this industry develop and grow, and we know where a lot of the pitfalls are. So when the analysts, the community talks about billions of connected devices, we talk about the opportunity in decision based on real-time information. We know the pains, we know the roadblocks that are the stumbling points of actually scaling IoT to a workable solution. And we want to share some of that insight with the audience here today on how to navigate successfully past that, how to plan your activities so that you can actually successfully deploy IoT. And maybe just before I start, for the audience, how many people here are actually involved in IoT projects, right? So that's a good audience. We're talking about IoT, right? How many of those deployments have over 1,000 active devices? Okay, that's a lot less. 10,000 or more. 1, 2, 3. 50,000 or more. Okay, 2. So scaling is an issue. This is not an easy prospect to go through, and as opposed to things we used to do in the past where, you know, the distinction between machine to machine or cutting the wire between a point-to-point solution, IoT proposes to be a much more integrated solution with many, many components. So that raises the bar. So the purpose of the talk today is to see how we can avoid some of these stumbling blocks and what we can share from things we've seen. And maybe, okay, first challenge, controlling the remote. So first question is, well, why do we care? Well, we care because there's a huge opportunity out there. When you talk, again, to whether it's Industry Arc, whether it's Accenture, whether it's JP Morgan or others, the numbers, whether on the device side or the application component, are in the billions of dollars and hundreds of billions. Growth is inevitable. I used to be taught that inevitable are death and taxes, but in this industry, there is a train that's left the station already, and we're on the path. But as we just saw from a very unscientific survey of the audience, IoT scale is really not very evident around there, and it's hard to do. So how can we get ourselves ready? How can we set up to guarantee success? What are some of the issues that we need to deal with in order to plan effectively for an IoT deployment? And I think we can talk about three things here today that as you're planning a large-scale or a significant, something that can add into those type of numbers, you need to really focus on the security, the manageability, and the scalability of your solution. So what do I mean by that? When we talk about securing the Internet of Things, this is not a static application, okay? It's not also something that you can add on to your solution after you deployed. The mindset of attackers is really about probing and looking for weaknesses in the system. And IoT is about a very complex animal that encompasses multi-channel, multi-path approach, and also multiple surfaces of attack. So attackers tend to focus on the weakest link in the chain, and our task as systems developer, solutions provider, is how do we harden that? How do we make life more difficult for attackers? I think the issue of cyber terrorism, cyber attacks, definitely hit the newspapers early on with Stuxnet, and it's become a day-to-day scenario with DDoS attacks or the Mirai attacks affecting players such as Deutsche Telekom and others. And the question is, what can we do to ensure that we have a robust solution in place? So the first thing we need to do is sort of think about what is the environment we are trying to deal with and why it's important that we deal with this correctly. So just as a statistic, the global costs, and these are GSMA numbers, for cybercrime escalated from 400 billion just in 2015, and the assumption next year will be over 2 trillion. So the net impact, the amount of digitalization puts value of services, of data. These don't only need to be, state terror type activities. This is information that is viable for financial benefit, for things like your digital factory actually shows your production volumes. So people can actually use the data in multiple different forms, and we need to protect that data. And this is an ongoing threat and definitely a challenge for people who are providing technology and systems into the market. We need to provide the building blocks. We need to provide the services to ensure that we have a robust solution in place. Otherwise, why would you risk deploying a large-scale solution and create vulnerabilities? So, as I mentioned briefly, this is a multi-dimensional challenge. We need you to think about multiple different surfaces or multiple different vectors that you need to protect. The first one is the physical thing, the device level. And again, the device is the hardware, it's the firmware on it, it's the where we store vital information, certificates, credit, any sort of data that would be appealing or useful to an attacker. And again, in an IoT domain, we can use the remote sensor to access the main servers and use that as an attack vector. We need to think about the network level. Okay, what are we putting in place to ensure that the data itself is safe in transit. And since many of these applications end up going into some sort of cloud service or are connecting to a data center one way or the other, we also need to think about how we protect the application servers and the users, both at a policy level, at a data access level, not to mention even the legal level behind GDPR and other, compliance issues we need to deal with. The good news is there are a lot of tools. There are elements at the hardware level that allow for a much more robust environment. There are things we can do at the transport layer to harden and make the data more secure. There are things that we can do at the application level. The problem is that these are disjoint, and they end up being very complex. So we as an industry need to simplify that. We need to make that much more accessible to users. The corollary is what is happening in the consumer space, where people don't do anything, and you end up with scenarios where there are websites where you can see, all the video cameras in the neighborhood. There are a lot of things going on because the access is so free. Our customer base is mostly industrial, B2B, so we need to supply the tools to the customers to ensure that their applications stay secure. So you need to create a robust environment. You need to ensure that you're hardening the solution. This is like the example of having the dog in the yard. The planned crime, the targeted attack will find a way to penetrate. But the incidental one, most of the hackers out there are just looking for easy access. So let's make it harder for them to go and attack our system by hardening the solution. And lastly, as an industry in general, we need to focus more on standards and enforce them to ensure that we are creating robust solutions in place. So again, the good news is there are measures to harden your solution to make it much more a toughened environment, but it demands that you think this through and do it up front, because it's very hard to add permissions, provisions, policies after you've deployed. To put this in reality, talk about one of our customers, Furno Elas, which does automated shipping monitoring. So when you think of the need to secure, we're talking large container vessels, we're talking commercial fishing, we're talking very complex, entities. And this is not a home video monitoring solution. You're talking about anti-piracy measures. You're talking about how do you ensure that the system that is put there in place to monitor things like containers, engine conditions, anything related to condition-based monitoring does provide, on the one hand, robust global connectivity, on the other side, a secure access scenario. So these are the type of solutions where you absolutely need to ensure that you are doing what you can do and what you need to do to ensure that all the data is secure and used for the purposes it's there. In this case, it could be data that is used for an actual physical attack vector, but also timelines on shipping dates, arrival, and the rest that can be used detrimentally. So real use case scenario for this type of applications. The next topic is about managing, okay? It's a fairly complex effort of putting together a robust solution. Being able to manage and operationalize it is a challenge. So what can we do to actually make this more robust? The key story of IoT is fairly simple. As we saw from the first show of hands, connecting a POC or putting your things on the network and getting some data from a sensor is a fairly simple exercise. It's done to show a path to corporate CEOs. Well, we're digitalizing the business. We can get data. We can actually access remote systems. That's great. but turning up a process from a POC into an operational support system that is robust, that is scalable, that has a mission-critical backup. You know, the cellular world used to come from a best effort scenario. If we're talking mission-critical scenarios, we need multiple paths. We need to ensure the data. We need to know what the SLAs are in order to put all these pieces together. So starting to assemble and manage a scaled, volumes-based IoT system is an operational challenge. There are a lot of manual processes, whether from, ensuring the connectivity piece, whether it's provisioning in the field. A lot of these devices are assembled in offshore locations and go through some sort of test protocol and end up in a different domain, a physical domain, where they need to be localized, set up, connected. Somebody needs to do that. That's typically a truck roll scenario today. What can we do to automate that process, to reduce errors, to simplify the actions our customers need to do in order to be able to deploy a system? These are real challenges. They're complex. We love to talk about simple IoT solutions. Making things simple is actually a really complex technology task, and you need to put a lot of knowledge in that. Different geolocations, different standards of communication, different service providers if we want to make the system behave properly. So there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be planned for in advance, and if you actually do the work up front, it makes it easier to deploy later on. A lot of these POCs get stuck because wouldn't that be nice? But then you start attacking the ROI or the expense of actually deploying a system, and the things go belly up. So you can avoid this by planning up front. Maybe a good example, and a user story always tells us a little bit better, is a real-life scenario of things one of our customers is doing in the domain of smart agriculture or precision agriculture. Clover is a provider that does hydroponic solutions. So we're talking about how do we feed 7 billion, 8 billion, humanity at scale. Hydroponics is one of those growing domains, or you could take it to the other extreme of what is being done today with cannabis growing across which is another driver for precision agriculture. In any case, you need to deal with sensors, you need to deal with flow meters, you need to deal with air conditioning systems, lighting systems, heating systems. These are really very varied data sources and controls. Typically, multi-vendor scenario, how do you assemble all the pieces? How do you normalize the data? How do you federate the data and bring it in together? So let me play a short video and show you how people actually go about this today, and how utilize solutions such as Telit can help put this together. Hopefully the video will play.
Hydroponics, the art of growing plants without soil. It maximizes growth capabilities, recycles water, and ensures clean, disease-free growth. But it's a complicated process that requires a high level of expertise and technology. Global leader in IoT enablement, Telit, provides just that and more.
We wanted to have the confidence to know that even if we're not here, we won't have any disaster in the greenhouse. The very big game changer that IoT technology brings is precision agriculture. We provide the exact recipe that each plant needs to grow. Other than that, it's a lot of saving in costs of manpower, nutrition materials, and things like that.
Telit's partner uControl provides wireless sensors. They're installed throughout the greenhouse to monitor growth. Partners and customers benefit from the comprehensive end-to-end IoT solution and accelerated time to value.
The IoT solutions is composed for a lot of components, and we are using a GSM modem from Telit, which we think are the best qualities, of course. And we also use the SIM connectivity and the cloud functionality to connect to any application worldwide.
This is how it works. Wireless Uconnect sensors transmit data to a centralized asset gateway. The UCommand gateway collects this data and transmits it via Telit cellular IoT module and global IoT data plan to the cloud-based Telit IoT platform for data analysis and delivery to user-facing applications. Instead of being busy worrying about maintaining a baseline condition for the solution, now Clover is focused on optimizing conditions for improved growth. Accelerated value. That's what truly well-enabled IoT does for a business.
This enables us to collect information from different facilities that are located in different places on the world. In turn, we use this information to create a better growth protocol that will yield a much better product.
Telit and partners, transforming hydroponics into a digital business through the power of IoT.
So another example in this case is very simple. You know, their expertise is agronomics, hydroponics, and they need the power of IoT in order to make the solution scalable. They want a contract, I think in Bavaria, for large-scale deployments in many houses and hydroponic plants. Taking that solution and making it cookie-cutter and deployable at scale is where you need to plan in advance. So the third piece is really scale, which we've been touching about, and I've been hard-pressed to find a good image of how to put that together. So this is me scaling an ice wall in Iceland. I don't think this is exactly the topic we wanted to talk about, but it does sort of point out the view. The fact that we actually know what we want to do, we have a successful POC, and we've done it once, still leaves the problem of how do we deploy this at scale. And that's the third barrier, if you will, of what we need to resolve in order to get to a viable and relevant IoT solution. So let's look at it from the numbers perspective. This graph really is based on data from IoT analytics, but in the white we see consumer devices, basically phones, iPads, etc. And we're already almost at 100% or beyond 100% connectivity. Many of you probably have more than one phone with you. And those numbers are fairly flat. The growth is coming from IoT, and the growth, by whatever source you're looking at, has a very high compounded annual growth rate. So IoT is definitely fueling the demand for a change. And it's not subscriber-based economy that we're used to from existing telco providers, MNOs, et cetera. This is a different animal. These are smart meters. These are devices that transmit intermittently. They're also, of course, autonomous cars and other sources of data. But a lot of these billions of devices, these high growth driving factors, to operate at scale, need automated solutions. They can't be dealt with as individual subscribers for the entire chain, provisioning, setup, et cetera. They need a different solution. So how do we scale effectively? As noted, and this is a recurring theme, right? POCs are relatively simple. But in order to ensure that we can deploy them, that we actually have a driving business case for the enterprise, for the business, we need to ensure that everything works. And this means it is preferable to avoid siloed solutions. IoT is all about federating data and applications from multiple environments. If we need to build a different solution for each application, then we're missing something. We need to ensure that it's a robust solution. If it's based on some sort of connectivity, be it cellular or other, we need to know that it's available, because this is the primary mode of communication of getting data from remote. If we're looking at many of our customers, they play internationally. So it's very difficult to create an operational model that works well in Europe, but doesn't work well in North America. It's difficult for a company to deal with multiple technologies. If we look at a lot of the IoT, both in Europe and in Asia-Pac, is still based on older and mature technologies such as 2G, because they're cost-effective and available, especially for sending small amounts of data. But in the Americas, the major carriers have turned off 2G and enforcing the transition to CAT-M technologies and LTE. So how do we have technology that can span both, has the correct fallback, and works correctly in multiple geolocation? So there's a lot of knowledge and specialized knowledge, and you need to do your homework, and you need to have qualified partners looking and providing you the right information if you're going to go to market at scale with these types of technologies. Another real-life example of a use case behind some of this is a customer of ours named PST Electronics. They're very active in the Latin America market. It's a telematics and transport solution. We worked well with them initially on hardware and putting together the solution. And they scaled it using a homegrown platform, which was great for, you know, a few hundred users, a few thousand users. And as it grew, they as a business started investing more and more in managing the operational sides of IoT deployment to the point where it became cost prohibitive and really difficult. You have to deal with updates, you have to deal with security, you have to deal with all the other elements behind making the solution robust and future-proof. And as you grow to that magic number of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 plus connections, that becomes an expense in and of itself. So the operational costs of scaling the solution start impacting the business case, the ROI. So they came to us to look for a path where they can actually manage their devices in a more mature and scalable, available platform. So that is one of the pieces that we help our customers in easing their pain. I think the key message behind all of this is that the examples, and I have a couple more I can share with you, are really that IoT is now. We don't need to wait for some 5G future or down the path. But there is a high barrier of complexity to doing this correctly. Again, POCs are easy, but if we want to really create a business return of value, we need to invest up front and take the right steps. As a technologist, it's almost painful to say this, but it's not about technology. It's all about the business. What can we do to help the business focus on the goals? My friends from the hydroponics solution are not communications experts. They're not technologists in the sense of figuring out how they want to do this. The friends from the telematics business are really focused on user-based behavior, insurance, fleet management, and others. They need to have the right solution in order to manage IoT at scale. So you need the right mix of the business purpose. What is the goal? What is driving the direction for the IoT project you have in mind? And you should seek out folks with the experience, the right tools to ensure that you can actually get to the finish line. We see way too many projects, initiated and failing along the way, especially at the corporate level, at the enterprise level, because they stumble on this path. They stumble on these roadblocks that really limit their ability to go forward. On the other hand, you see a lot of young companies, a lot of startups scaling very quickly because they're very focused. They have a unique solution. They're using what IoT can provide to create a unique advantage, a disruptive factor in the market. And I'll give some examples of that as I go forward. So we encourage you to stop by if you have the time during the show to visit us at booth D431. It's down the hall here. And actually see some of this in action, see some hardware, some applications, some of the technology behind the pieces that I described here today. But if I want to again, focus on some real live user examples, I'd like to end with two more and then open this up for questions, shared experiences, pain points you've encountered on your path to IoT deployments, and see if we can actually help out or point in the right direction. A great example of combining technology is a customer of ours, Ambrosio Robots. They used their products, you're probably familiar with the iRobots, or I've seen these out in the field in Northern Europe robustly, to create a robotic lawn care solution. You need autonomous operation. So these guys have great tech on the machinery and devices, and actually this is a budding domain of autonomous devices that are out there, and they're all based on the fact that they can be managed remotely, that their geolocation is up and running, that they have communication, and when they're out in the field, not dependent on any other path and connection. So the use of cellular tech is actually critical to the application. We partnered with Ambrosio to help them, because the thought of how these are deployed, how connectivity works, how they're managed in remote locations are all critical to the business path of actually creating a successful application, in this case, a deployment of a device. And to take it to the other extreme, I wanted to take you to yet another customer story in the IoT space, which is also scaling very rapidly. And the idea is one of a better mousetrap. This is, in this case, in reality, one of our customers is a Nordic-based provider called TrapMe. The business is really about field service optimization. So what they do is they service rat traps. Painful as that may sound, real problem. The problem is twofold. One, you don't want truck rolls going out to the field and basically servicing an empty trap. And the other scenario is, of course, if the trap is full, you want that taken away from the customer premises as quickly as possible. So IoT would be an ideal solution, right? We can deploy these everywhere. They can tell us when the trap is occupied and communicate on their own. The folks at TrapMe are not technologists. They don't want to deal with the operational issues of connectivity, of putting all the different elements in place. They wanted a business solution. Give me the data from the trap. Then let us take all the advantages which impact our business. In this case, field service optimization, which creates the cost savings, which creates the differentiators, which creates value from them. And there are thousands of these devices deployed. So these are the challenges that take IoT from the domain of, that's a nice idea, to how do we really create business out of IoT? How do we provide a fundamental solution that works both securely, is manageable, and can scale from a POC to a full-fledged business? With that, I've finished my formal presentation. And if I'd like to open this up to any questions from the audience on what you're seeing or what challenges you're facing, and the pains you're feeling today when trying to deploy IoT. Any questions? All right, then thank you very much for your participation. Enjoy Barcelona, and do come and stop and visit Telit at D431. Thank you very much.